So let's have News Nation political contributors Mick Mulvaney and Chris Hahn weigh in on all of this. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Morning, Adrian.
Let's start with you, Chris. Oh, very polite as always. They're so genteel. Just wait a few seconds. Chris, more Democrats are distancing themselves from the Biden administration. You've got Senator Jackie Rosen, for example, barely leading her Republican opponent in Nevada, just 2 percentage points. But she's been breaking from the White House stance of withholding bombs from Israel, for example. Overall, do Democrats have to be more moderate to win right now?
Look, if the election comes down on who is less likely to support Joe Biden's policy, the Republican's going to win every election. This happens every 2 years. There are people on the left and the right who try to distance themselves from the president of the United States of their own party, and it never works, right? It is not a good strategy. That doesn't mean you can't show that you are independent. There are many cases where, especially in a Senate race, someone will run ahead of their presidential candidate. That will likely happen again this year in some states, particularly in Ohio, where I think Sherrod Brown will emerge victorious. But Sherrod Brown is one of those guys who says, look, I'm independent, but this is my president, and I support him here, here, and here, and we disagree here. That's okay. The number in Nevada in that Q poll was the number that most stuck out to me because it was a huge gap in a state that Democrats almost always have won the last couple of decades. So I understand why they see a need to show some distance, but don't think that you could run away from Biden and still win. Nobody can run that fast.
Well, Mick, I think there are a lot of Democrats who would agree with Chris, deflecting, saying don't put too much stock in these kinds of polls. Pennsylvania Democratic Senator Bob Casey saying the same thing as Chris is saying. He doesn't often agree with the administration policy. Georgia Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock saying that polls were down for him when he entered the race, but then he still won. So how much do these polls matter, do you think?
Adrian, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get this image of Joe Biden running after anybody, after what Chris just said, but that's not the point. The point is this: Chris is right to a certain extent. You can't run away from the top of your ticket. What you're trying to do is create the impression, the real impression that, I'm with the party, but I'm also more local. Keep in mind, all politics is still local. There's no question about it. Even if you're running for Senate in a big state. This is especially true when you get down to Congress. There are going to be times where individual members say, look, I support the president here, here, and here, but right here on this issue, it's a little bit different back home in the district, a little bit back home in my state. So I'll be a little bit different than the top of my ticket if you send me to Washington, D.C. Great example here was Tom Suozzi, a name you probably not heard much of unless you live around New York. He won a very high-profile special election a couple of weeks ago, running much more to the right on immigration than the Biden administration. In fact, one of his ads was described as more Trump than Trump. You can do that. You can still be a good member of your party and then break from the top of your party on key issues that are important to your constituents.
Well, and this is a different year, I think a lot of people are feeling, because of the intensity of what has been happening. The border, we've never seen the border look like it does in modern times. We have not seen this in generations, if it ever was like this. Then you've got the Gaza-Israeli conflict, and then you have Biden's age. But I could see you nodding your head, Chris, in agreement that are most Democrats resigned to the fact that, yes, it has to be Biden on the White House ticket, even though they wish there was an alternate, and they're voting along party lines, but then they're shifting or being more vocal about their issues and where they believe their stance is, and maybe, again, moving away from what the president has been saying.
Well, I appreciate Mick giving a compliment to my other former boss, Tom Suozzi. Everybody knows I worked for Chuck Schumer, but I also worked for Tom Suozzi for many years. Look, elections come down to a lot of factors. I never think immigration is one of them. I never think foreign policy is one of them. And Mick is right. All politics is local until it's not, right? Until there's a national wave that sweeps everybody up. So, look, I think Democrats have to run their race, run a strong race. They got to say, look, I might not agree with Joe Biden on X, Y, and Z, but here are the principles that I believe and we share together.